Welcome to Fandom Power.
Hey, welcome to Fandom Power, the show where we talk about all things fandom. I'm your host, Wes Arscott, and today, our inaugural episode. And what a treat to be able to have a wonderful group of people here in the room with me tonight on our first episode. So really, what is the first episode, really, on a show about fandom and fandom power? What is your fandom power? And what is fandom? It doesn't seem like it was that long ago that fandom really wasn't a word in the collective vernacular, but really, if we break it down a little bit, we're talking about fandom comes from the word fan. And that obviously goes back to the roots of professional sports and baseball, all the way back to 1903. So really, if we go a little further, fan from the Latin fanaticus, meaning mad or inspired by God. And certainly when it comes to certain fandoms, there can be a divine level of reverence there. I'm looking at you sports guys that smash TVs when your team doesn't win. But yeah, so fandom, been around since about 1903. And tonight we're going to have a nice little roundtable conversation about that and kind of what it means to each of the panelists. So without any further ado, let me introduce for you tonight my partner in life and crime, my lovely wife, Kimberly Arscott.
Hey, everybody.
And joining us tonight here in the studio, all the way from Havelock, our friends, super nerds, big fans like we are, Dan and Kelly Buckley. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for wanting to come out and do this with us.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. We're all big, I shouldn't say we're all big. No, I am. I'm going to embrace it because that's what we're all about here. We're all big fans of something. Or we're all big fans of some things. Certainly, I know we have some overlap in our interests, which may or may not include shopping at Walmart.
Yes.
Interesting story, you know, when Kim and I were trolling a Walmart one night and we just happened to be in the toy section, go figure, and I just happened to overhear Dan and Kelly talking about some Nerf guns, and I had just done a Nerf paint mod, and I thought, oh, this is a good opportunity to say hello and just kind of share that.
And you're a talker. Like,
yeah,
you talk with anyone.
Yeah, so we met in the Nerf aisle at the Walmart.
Yes, we did. How's that for a meet cute?
Yeah, really. Since then, you know, we've come a long way, and certainly our interest in sort of science fiction and fantasy and all those wonderful things that we love to watch and take part in have certainly sparked lots of conversations. So I thought it'd be really fun if we could capture one of those and just kind of share it with the world. So I guess really a good way to start the conversation is really just to kind of touch on what is each of our fandoms. I guess if we had to boil it down to say maybe just one or two, because I know we all have multiple interests. What would you say your biggest fandom is? Now let's start with Kelly. How about you go first?
I'd say one of my earlier ones was Star Trek, for
Star
sure.
Trek.
Yeah, I'm a Next Generation girl, for sure. But I actually grew from a love of Patrick Stewart because I remember way back, when I was, going to come on this show, I was thinking about it, and I remembered when my stepfather first rented a VCR, the two movies he brought home was Flashdance and Excalibur, and I loved Excalibur. So I've loved Patrick Stewart for a long time, and then it grew into when he did Dune.
Sure.
So he was the one that drew me to the Next Generation, and then I just fell in love with the series. For sure, like other characters on it. So
it's funny because I didn't see Excalibur probably until a few years later, but Next Gen for sure was on TV by the time I had seen Excalibur for the first time. Or maybe I had seen it, but I didn't associate Patrick Stewart with the Next Gen because it was such a long gap between. But I can remember going, oh my God, that's Guinevere's dad.
Should I out myself at this point and admit that I've never seen Excalibur or Dragon Slayer?
Oh, wow.
I know.
We don't have enough time for that double feature, but oh my God, really?
Really?
Okay, so when we go to do those episodes, I got some homework for you, sir. Star Trek for Kelly, that's awesome. And what about you, Dan?
Basically all things science fiction, like big unexplored worlds and vistas and all that kind of stuff. The stuff that we get in spades in Star Wars and Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica and, all those amazing stories from other places.
It's funny, we just did somewhere between 3 and 4 hours of recording for what we thought was going to be our first episode, big Star Wars episode. Mm-hmm. Hey, spoiler, guys, you're going to get a 2-parter Star Wars episode here coming up pretty soon. But one point I'd forgotten to make on those recording sessions was we were talking sort of critical about Star Wars. And, there's, for me anyway, I kind of make this distinction between science fiction versus space opera. And I very much feel like Star Wars, the round hole and the round peg is very much a space opera kind of story, as opposed to something like, the first 3 seasons of the original Star Trek, which I think most fans really do think of as science fiction per se, or 2001 or 2010 hard science fiction.
Right, right.
Do you make that distinction?
Yeah. I mean, it very definitely seems more plotted out, more like everybody has said, smarter people than me have said about it being the hero's journey, that it's, you take A and do B and then move through C to D. And so, it seems very formulaic when you look at it with more mature eyes than when I was 7 and saw it for the first time. And at the time, it seemed more science fiction-y. Yeah. And now it seems, that's just fancied up Romeo and Juliet. Or what is it? The Iliad?
The Iliad, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I would have said in all the years that we've known each other, I would have pegged you for you would have jumped on a horror franchise of some sort. I thought for sure you would.
I had my time doing those, but no, they've gotten a little too good at picking the very dark recesses of my brain and putting it up on the screen. And no, thank you. I am out of here.
Though we've passed the torch a bit. Sydney's kind of gotten into that. So we're showing her some of the old classics. Like she just watched The Exorcist, and we were excited for her to watch it, and she was like, meh.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That still traumatizes me, that movie.
Yeah, and other things that freak her out, I would be like, meh. So she has totally different tastes than us, and it's surprising though. But it's nice and she's into, special effects, so it's kind of cool to see her glomming onto some of the interests that we had as kids, and we're kind of reliving it through her.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome that she can tolerate that kind of stuff, because I know for me, being a younger, and like Sydney, being a younger sibling, I kind of had the older brother sort of over my shoulder who was the dominating force, behind what movies got rented. So, it was almost a guarantee that every Sunday afternoon was going to be 5 or 6, maybe not 5 or 6, 2 or 3 horror movie rentals. And it was, you better not say anything and ruin this for me. So I sat there and shivered quietly,
Yeah. I had a similar experience. I had an older cousin, and I would be at my aunt's house a lot. And some of my horror, Phantasm, scared the bejeezers out of me. And it was thanks to my older cousin playing that in the house.
Phantasm, the movie in a funeral home.
Oh, my goodness. That little silver ball, I think I had nightmares about.
Yeah. So, Dan, you're going to leave it kind of wide open, and you're kind of embracing fandom as a more holistic.
I'm a child of the 70s. I was old enough to actually get to see Star Wars in the theater and all that kind of thing. So, Star Wars is near and dear.
Yeah.
But, there were a lot of other ones that I saw along the way that, ticked a few more boxes. But Star Wars is always sort of the main one that you can talk reasonably at length with 90% of the population about.
Cool. And no one says you have to have, what's your one thing? No, you don't have to have one thing. I just thought it'd be a fun sort of, let's dissect it down and maybe just talk a little bit more focused. But I'm very much like you. I have such a broad interest, but I guess if I, had to narrow it down, Star Wars would definitely be top 2. Like I said, we just did over 3 hours of recording on Star Wars. So and I'm going to go back to that because any one of those subjects that we covered in that episode could be a show of its own. But, the other one that I had mentioned that night was, Transformers and how much I
love Transformers.
Yeah, I really love Transformers. Don't get me wrong. There are aspects of Transformers that I absolutely, I won't say that I hate them, but I have no interest in them. As a whole franchise, there are parts of the lore and elements of Transformers that I, in the words of Adam Savage, I refuse your reality and choose to, insert my own.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, Transformers is my gateway to nerdom and has been since I was, 9 or 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Kim?
Well, I wouldn't say I have one specific. And you guys are talking about, when you were younger, what got you into it. But
sure.
I don't know. Star Trek, the original on TV. I'd watch that. I loved watching that, and I Dream of Jeannie, that kind of stuff. I wasn't into the normal cartoons that everyone else was watching.
Like Saturday morning stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, right? Like, all my friends are like, oh, did you watch this? Did you watch that? And I'm like, I just watched Star Trek. I just watched, I Dream of Jeannie, and they're like,
right.
Yeah, you're weird, right? Like, so is that fandom? I don't know. But that kind of stuff.
You watched all the Desilu productions.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
MASH was also another classic.
I never really got into that one, to be honest.
But here's the thing, like you asked a good question, like what is it? What is fandom? Is it really fandom? Well, of course it is. I mean, like if we go back to the sports analogy and we really, like the word origin is fan. And I mean, fan comes from fanatic. And I mean, if you can sit there and like I made the joke about smash your TV, but if you can put on the clothing of your favorite sports team and you can, have an entire ceremony, because let's face it, game day Sunday when baby's in the kitchen making chicken wings and chili, like this is a big deal. Like these people are uber fans. Yeah, you totally can. Sure you can.
Well, I think for me, like as an adult, I think the whole science fiction and vampire lore, I think, has got more of my attention. Like if you look at my bookshelf, it's always, you're not going to find like a romance novel on there, and you're not going to find anything like, it's going to have a vampire, it's going to have a werewolf, it's going to have a fairy, it's going to have some crazy thing in there.
I've seen your bookcase and there's a lot of black covers on there.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Sucky Stackhouse on there.
In the corner, but yeah, she's there.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah. I like that kind of stuff. The girls, I drive them crazy because I wanted all the science fiction stuff, and they were like, Mom, no, I don't. They weren't interested.
No.
Right?
That brings us to our next point. I'm going to stay with you for a minute, Kim, because that takes us right into sort of, the kids weren't into it, but you were. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the gateway was? Like, what was it that attracted you to that kind of literature?
Well, I always liked it. Like, I think movies, growing up, we lived in, small town. Your parents are going to take you everywhere. So movies was the outlet, right?
Mm-hmm. Very much. Yeah.
And so, The Last Starfighter or Starman or,
sure.
All those movies fascinated me, right? Aliens, that kind of thing, right? And so I just naturally gravitated towards that aspect.
Sure.
Right? Which, comes to vampires and the lore and all that kind of stuff.
I guess really for me, there's a disconnect there for me between the visual medium and the written word, because as a young kid, I had no interest in reading. Like it was...
See, and I loved it. I love to read.
I find that fascinating because that's just an element that I can't... I mean, as much as I like to read now, of course, I find it much harder to read with the condition of my eyes. But I mean, I didn't read as a kid. So, making the jump from the visual medium, like you say, film and television, which is very much where my interests are steeped in, to go to literature, I find it just fascinating that there was enough interest there for you that you wanted more. And maybe you couldn't get it because you have no control over production schedule, but hey, there's this book.
Well, and I think that's why I started writing my own book, right? Because not that I was anything lacking, but I just had this whole story that I wanted to do. I just find it all fascinating. I've had, 1,000 books.
Yeah.
And each story is different, and it's not old. Like vampires, how many things can you write about a vampire, right? But
yeah, for sure.
There is.
As long as you leave out the sparkles, you're good.
Oh, exactly. Hello.
Don't sell it short. Some people like sparkle vampires.
Glitter and glue.
Well, I think we actually got him stymied.
Yeah, there's no reasonable comeback for me for that one.
Sure.
You know what? She did something at a time, and everyone loved it. Mm-hmm. Looking back, you're like, oh my goodness. But at the time, it was something new. It was something fresh. It wasn't
Absolutely.
I will give her this. We're talking, oh my God, what's
Stephanie
her name?
Meyer.
Yes, Stephanie Meyer.
Yes.
I'm kind of taking a shot in the dark with this one, but I would say that her fandom probably influenced the way that she wrote, because a lot of the music that made it into those movies was the music that she was listening to when she wrote the book. So it's great taste in music. I like a lot of the music from those films. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think when I'm writing, I do the same thing. If I'm writing and listening to something, it just naturally, that vibe gets into a scene or something, some element. It happens. It's easy.
Mm-hmm. So theater of the mind's eye for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can imagine that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's my favorite, is being submerged into that.
Yeah.
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 For sure.
So let's go back to Star Wars for a minute for you, Dan, and let's just
no more vampires.
Yeah, moving on.
No, we're definitely going to come back to that.
Space vampires.
Yeah. So if we go back to Star Wars and we talk about that as your gateway, what was the draw for you?
The draw?
Yeah, what was it that
my
attracted
initial
you to
impression?
it? Or were you that type of kid was like, get in the car, we're going to the movies?
I don't know. I was about 6 years old when it came out, 6 or 7, and we were fortunate enough that we had a drive-in theater within about 10 minutes of our house.
Yeah.
And Mom and Dad had seen the trailers for Star Wars and thought, well, this will be fun. We'll take the kids to this. And we went, and there was some Disney thing on before, Shaggy Dog. Or,
Okay.
Something like that. And so by the time Star Wars came on,
it
was already well past my bedtime. And I remember standing in the back on the bench seat of my dad's Duster.
Yeah.
Leaning up over to try and see the screen through that and hear the audio through that little lunchbox of a speaker. And I remember seeing these 2 massive ships come over the top of the screen. Never seen anything like it in the world. It's instantly got my attention.
For sure.
And then we get into all these soldiers running around. It looks really cool. Something's going down. And then Darth Vader comes through the door.
That striking imagery that's really captured multiple generations of kids and adults and has just been this cultural phenomenon ever since. It's easy to sort of see how a young kid could get caught up in that.
Right. And so for me, that was like, oh my goodness. And I mean, to be honest, there had been nothing like that.
No, there really hadn't. Well, by comparison, Star Wars number 1 movie in 1977. Do you remember the number 2 movie was?
No.
Smokey and the Bandit.
There you go.
Yeah.
I saw that one at the drive-in too.
Not the same double feature though.
No, I don't think so.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so I remember being tired before the show started. But that opening sequence, I stayed awake until literally I fell over.
Yeah.
And it was such an escape from everything that I had known before then.
Sure.
I hadn't really thought about it at the time, but it didn't even look like it was filmed on Earth. As far as I knew, they had gone to Tatooine and filmed that there. Or had built spaceships and had found a way to film.
For sure.
And so for me, it was like, wow, look at what's possible. This happened long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away. What am I doing? Like, I need to get off the pine here and start doing something.
Yeah, really.
Because Luke is out there saving the universe.
I love the simplicity of that. One of the things that I identify the most with in Star Wars is the I'm speaking classic trilogy specifically, but the very, very distinct good versus evil. There is no question of who the good guys are and who the bad guys are.
Right.
And that's classic storytelling. Like, I love how the simplicity in that aspect of Star Wars.
For sure.
Kelly, were you an original Trek fan?
I grew to love the original series from the movies because, just like you, I watch movies incessantly.
Yeah.
Old, new. I'm like a nerd when it came to movies. I had the Leonard Maltin book of movies.
Oh, yeah.
And I made my own notes in it.
That's pretty awesome.
Put my own star ratings beside his.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right
That
when
is
I
cool.
disagreed. And not just like current stuff. It would be like, what was that? Born Yesterday, the original black and white.
Right.
I love
watched
black and
because
white.
of Leonard Maltin.
It's fun. So it should have been Siskel, Ebert, and Kelly.
Well, I didn't like that so much because I didn't have a lot of money as a kid, so I didn't go to see the current stuff. So their stuff really didn't mean much to me. So his book was more relevant to me because it had older stuff in it. So it would be stuff playing on, Sunday afternoons. And so I could watch it and I wouldn't read what he said about the movie until after I watched it, just to see if our opinions differed.
That's pretty cool.
I wouldn't spoil it.
Wasn't there a line in The Lost Boys where the grandfather said, "Don't need a TV if you read the TV guide"?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I loved TV Guide. I did the crosswords too.
Oh, wow.
I think we have a similar sort of background where Star Trek is concerned because only now as an adult, and I hate to say this because I think I'm maybe a little bit more open to this stuff, but it really just proves how much our generation was exposed to the visual medium. But to watch the original Trek in syndication prior to the remastering of the show was almost unwatchable for me.
Yeah, I tried to watch it before, whenever they had an episode running on, TV. And my grandmother's TV was probably not very good to begin with, so it was very fuzzy to watch.
Yeah.
But I loved that. That's what made it so awesome. It was campy. It was like, what's that show? Frankenstein.
The hilarious House of Frankenstein.
I love that show and how campy, and I don't know. I liked all that kind of stuff.
And it's on Amazon Prime now. All 300
I know, and I've been watching.
Episodes.
It's awesome.
God.
Yeah, it ran a lot longer than you think it did.
Oh yeah.
Goodness.
But like I was the odd duck in my family. Like no one else liked that stuff.
No.
But that campiness,
sure.
I like it.
Like I have to admit that even on the weekends when there was Saturday morning cartoons, I would wake up that little bit earlier because CHCH was the company that produced
locally produced,
and we got it at my house because I grew up in Toronto. So for us, it was free to air,
straight shot
TV,
across the water.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I would get up and I would watch it, and I didn't understand most of it. And I was like, "This isn't funny. Is this supposed to be like a joke show?" Or is this
forever? I mean, I shouldn't say the one. There's a lot of things that stick out, but really the one thing that comes to mind every time I think about that, Ooga Booga.
Ooga Booga.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Wolfman getting up and dancing.
I was going to say the Wolfman, yeah.
And I never quite understood whether that was supposed to be like a music review or...
I think it was just meant to be a
5-minute interlude.
Yeah. Psychedelic
just
trip.
Some time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But who's getting high at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning? Or maybe you got
some
high,
kid's parent.
Maybe you got high Friday night and you're just coming down. And this is your, I'm just going to lull off to sleep now.
So
Need
then,
a couple minutes of Wolfman dancing in front of tie-dye Paisley.
Yeah. Going back to Star Trek, though, you have the original series, and I think we both agree it was very difficult to watch. And whereas Kim embraced the camp, I didn't have the intellect to appreciate what they were doing. And like I say, only after the remaster where they upgraded the special effects to, at least circa 1989 level effects. Once I could get past the terrible visuals, I could finally get to where they were going with the writing. So I definitely appreciate it much more now than I did then. But I would agree with you. TNG was my Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Voyager.
We've recently rewatched a few of the seasons too. Like it's kind of one of my go-to, let's put something on and, it's easy watching. And I just love it still.
Yeah.
So we have Star Trek and Star Wars at the same table. And I probably know the answer, but I have to ask the question. Which one?
Star Trek.
Wow.
Star Trek.
Are you saying that?
My main entry into science fiction was. But to be honest, they've done a lot more, in my opinion, with Star Trek's universe.
Interesting, yeah.
Like, we have multiple timelines. You've got the Chris Pine Enterprise, and you've got the old William Shatner, and all those extra. I like them a lot because they're quick, they're easy to digest. They've got some overarching storyline,
right?
But, by and large, you've got, Monster of the Week. I love Monster of the Week.
Episodic.
Yeah.
I can jump back into season 6, episode 23, and I'm right there.
I feel like I'm spoiled because we're cord cutters, and now that we stream everything, the term binge watch is now a household term. So like that whole idea of episode of the week or waiting a week between episodes is like practically I didn't say it's unheard of, but it really is such a rare thing now. And I don't know if I could go back.
Yeah. And a side note, when Kelly brought up, the TV guide, I'm like, oh my God, remember that thing?
Yeah, TV guide.
And we'd plan what day what we're watching at what time.
Especially if you had a sibling, you had to agree on stuff too.
Yeah,
okay, this is like I Dream of Jeannie was one of the few my sister and I agreed on. So we would often watch that.
Yeah. Right? As the youngest, I didn't have much of a say in that. I just, most of my shows were on either early in the morning or Saturday. So most of my TV watching was pretty much unhindered.
Yeah, it's a whole different world now with binge watching. Like it's just, it's so different.
Yeah, and each kid is in their own room watching their own device. So
right.
you're not even fighting over one screen anymore. There are multiple apps. And, when I said, should I shut down the Disney account? They're like, no.
I remember talking.
Never make a threat that you're not prepared to follow
Yeah.
through on.
That wasn't a threat.
You didn't ask.
I forgot
me,
about
the
Mandalorian. I forgot.
I talked my family into watching the series V when it was on TV.
The original V.
Yeah.
With Mark Singer.
Jane Badler.
Yeah, and
Sure.
Yes.
Freddy Krueger.
Michael Ironside.
Michael Ironside. Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Englund.
Yes, that's the guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it was, that one episode a week. We were dying to watch it, and I got them all to watch it, which was cool. And then you spent the next week talking about it for the next episode. Now we'd watch the whole series in a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You lose something with the binge watching, I feel.
That
excitement is gone, right? The build up, because you can just go, okay, I can watch the next one.
Yep.
I once traveled with my girlfriend at the time to her parents' place, which was like really, really far away. And because we were going to be there for a few days, we rented movies, and we rented V, the original miniseries, and then V, the final battle, and watched it in a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the build up for something like that, where you're like, oh my God, did you see? Oh, he's in the mothership. Oh no, what's
he's an
gonna
alien.
happen?
Oh
He
my
just
God.
looked out and they opened their jaw and they ate that
Did
whole
they really
guinea
just
pig.
eat that whole thing?
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? How did that even get on TV?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, going back to Transformers, because that's kind of what I'm picking tonight. It's got to be, it's a toss-up between the toys and the animated series, and I'm not really sure which one came first, because in my mind, they kind of came at the same time. And,
Yeah.
I mean, one influenced the other. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why the animation models were so drastically different from the toys. And I loved the toys at the time. Like, they were just this sort of engineering masterpiece. And I didn't find out until many years later that no, it was just an import line that was rebranded as something else. Even in Japan, the Transformers, the American, branded version of Transformers has superseded, its origins in Diaclone and Microchange. It's now, Transformers is sort of the default lore there. But, again, I think, not to go back to Star Wars, but really, after 77, everybody wanted to have a little slice of that Star Wars money.
Oh, yeah.
And, merchandising took off like mad after that movie came out. And I think Transformers really on some level just kind of fell into that. We need a new Star Wars. We need something to keep the kids buying toys. Well, let's give them real toys. But the Marvel Sunbow series, to me, is it's the definitive, it's what I go back to when I think of Transformers. When I, conjure up images of Optimus Prime, I only hear Peter Cullen, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There is no other voice.
Yeah. I mean, and there are, though. Like, there's been quite a few, but...
There isn't. Stop it.
And so these are some of the elements of Transformers when I say that I don't really care for. There's a bunch of those in between, where I just don't care for them. But that doesn't invalidate them. It just means that I don't connect with them. But at the same time, as a whole, the franchise I find is just this wonderful, again, that simplistic good versus evil, where for the most part, at least in the visual medium, the good guys are the good guys and the bad guys are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I like those lines to be clearly delineated. And I don't know, I think it just falls into that whole, when you're young and your imagination is captured easily, the idea that not only can I escape by watching this on TV, but I can contrive scenarios and situations and I can play in that universe with my toys. And so to me, like, Transformers was kind of the ultimate in escapism for me as a kid. So that's kind of my attraction to it. And even as an adult, it still takes me back there every time there's a new Transformer project, even to some degree the live action movies, as divisive as they were. But
I loved the animated series as a kid, and unfortunately, being a girl, I would ask for Transformers, but I was never given a Transformer, even though I asked for them.
So sad.
Yes, and I think I got one finally, and it was one of the Constructobots.
The Constructicons.
See, if you can't,
I'm sorry.
You don't know
I'm
their
sorry.
name.
But I loved it, even though it wasn't the one I wanted. I wanted Optimus Prime, of course.
Sure.
But I loved it. I also loved Barricade.
The movie Barricade?
I like the movie Barricade one,
Yeah.
that character. I like that one. Did you ever know that I actually was a Transformer once?
Kelly, there's something you're not telling me.
Yes. When I was younger, I did color guard stuff.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And one winter guard, we would perform in gyms and stuff, and you just dance to the music and spin your flags and stuff. And the one theme our captain picked was Transformers.
That's awesome.
And so we had silver painted faces.
That's pretty awesome.
And the uniform she picked were, those paper kind of coveralls. And we put flashy tape on it. So we were all robots and danced to the Transformers soundtrack.
That's really cool. Remind me there's some other things I want to talk about, but I want to come back to that. There's a really cool band out there that does live performances dressed up as Transformers. And it's pretty fantastic.
I have actually, I think I've seen that on
I've
YouTube.
seen quite a few of their videos. Yeah. They're pretty cool.
Yes,
So,
I understand your love.
I guess we should really talk about now. We all have our introductions to it. We know what we really, attracted us to it as kids or as young adults or whenever we were brought into the thing that we love. But, that we're not those people anymore. Here we are in our 40s and we're still having these conversations because it still means something to us. So I guess the next question I'd have for everybody is, what does it mean to you now?
I think being older, you can afford more of the fun stuff. You can budget a little better, especially being a kid. Do I buy candy or a toy? But now, I find that I can get that pricey model if I want it. I'm still looking for that Impala from Supernatural myself. There's certain things that
totally.
They're not often do I glom onto something hard like that, but I find I can splurge a little bit more being older, and now with the internet, and Amazon, you have more search, engines and availability to you to search. We can afford now to go to Comic-Cons and, look at the tables and, go to Niagara Falls and being older and, leave the kids with frozen dinners. Bye. See ya. We're going.
Exactly.
We're going off to be juvenile for a weekend. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Especially with now the kids, the age they are, they're more independent, and now we're more independent, but
they come down sometime mid-Saturday going, have you seen Mom and Dad? I swear to God, they've been on that couch
Yeah, there's
forever.
a note stuck to the dog, Be back Sunday.
Let each other out. Try not to pee on the carpet.
So we talk about, when you say that the next gen, though, that's your thing. Clearly it means something to people today because we've got this revival. We've got Picard that's out now. And there's talk of reviving Benjamin Sisko's character in some shape or form, which although he's not TNG, he's a contemporary of that time. So these characters that they're living, breathing, they're real to us on some level. So as 40-something-year-old Kelly, where does TNG sit with you now?
The thing I loved about Next Generation is the perfect world it had, and when I tried to watch Picard, it kind of ruined that for me, and it made going back to watching TNG a little harder because it's like going to watch the Black Widow movie now. It's like, well, I know she died, so what's the point?
Spoiler.
It's kind of spoiled it for me. So, it was deep and it had, talked about politics and, probably real world stuff. But, when I was, 12 watching Next Generation, I liked that. Someday the world's going to be so much better. And I love that escapism. And so some of the new stuff, I'm just, it kind of turns me off. And
so would you say that it's lost some of the magic for you?
I'd say so. I think they kind of ruined it a little for me.
Yeah.
It's definitely different.
Overplaying a good song kind of thing, it can be like that with some of the Star Wars stuff for me too.
Right,
I'll try to watch some of the other series or read the books, and it's like, no.
I find
done.
Picard is Captain Picard is this certain character, and he holds himself a certain way, and he this presence. And then in Picard, it was like a shadow of who he used to be. And I get he's much older, and I get all this stuff, but I really feel they did him an injustice.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
Right? Like they could have written him so much better. Still have some of the, the controversy that was going on and whatnot, but they really dropped the ball. Yeah. And Picard, Captain Picard was never weak.
No.
Right? And it was like,
Oh, see, I actually got a different take out of, and you and I, Kim, we've had sort of this conversation before because we watched it together.
Yeah.
Whereas I was kind of the other way around it. You know, we're talking, this is TNG went off the air in 93. So as many years have passed in real life, or as many years have passed for Picard the character. So you have Jean-Luc Picard, who's at a much different stage of his life, and he's a much older man, he's a much frail man. And as we learn about his falling out with Starfleet, I thought he was written really well. The injustice or the disservice to the character, I felt, was making him into a robot and curing his heart condition, because that takes away that frailty, that he has a finite amount of time left to get back in the game and really fix the thing that he feels he needs to do. Having him walking around as a ticking time bomb about to die is much more compelling than, oh, you're a robot now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fire under him.
I guess so.
You know, if you take the fire away, then I'll get to it.
Yeah.
I got time. No big rush.
Although, I mean, they could turn that around on the second season and really give him that renewed sense of, my time was limited and now I have a little bit more, so I better do everything I can possibly do with this new opportunity. And that could be compelling, but the way that it was left, it just left me like a little bit, oh, that's disappointing.
Well, they can reset everything just by bringing Q back, and he just snaps his fingers and resets everything. You know, like they can go backing up, backpedal. Okay, let's start again.
Can we have a side chat for a minute?
Can Ryan Johnson?
Why are you shaking your head? No.
Oh, it's fine. It's
no.
good.
Kim has a really cool Q story, and I think you should tell it because it's really neat.
Well, it's embarrassing.
No, it's really cool.
Okay, well, in case anyone doesn't know, I'm a hairstylist, and I used to work down in the city and live down there and whatnot. And this guy, and I was a huge fan. Like, I was already into Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. And it was later in the evening. This guy come in, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I know him. I know him. And then it dawned on me who I think it was.
That's John Delancey.
It's Q. And I'm like, so I start, that little sweat that you get all over. And I'm like, no, why would he come into my hair salon? Right? Like, no, he's got other people to cut his hair. And then I'm like, it's him. I know 100% it's him. So it takes a few minutes. And he's sitting there, very nice, sweet man. He's got a little smirk on his face. So he knows that I'm looking at him. He's clued in, and he's just waiting, right?
And are you? Yes, I am.
Well, I get enough courage, and I'm like, I ask him, are you so-and-so? Are you Q? And he's like, who? And I'm like, and so I'm starting to panic because I'm like, maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
And I'm like, the guy from Star Trek, Q, right? And he's like, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, come on. Yeah. And he totally played it like he didn't know. He had that smirk of,
he's being
very cute, like
cute,
coy with you,
coy. And I'm like, so it was this hidden, like, yes, I am, but no, I'm not, and
yeah.
And then
if I admit to it, you'll get on the phone and call all your friends, and then I'll be swamped here. So no, I am
just
not
want
that
a haircut,
person.
lady.
Yeah, I don't think I would have, to be honest. But and no one else in the salon was like into Star Trek, so I couldn't even go like, this is so and so, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I met Q.
Nightmare from My Little Pony.
No. So that was just a fun little thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I still think it's a pretty awesome story. That he was
cool.
cool with you and just kind of played with that.
I don't know who.
What do you mean?
Yeah. It was cool. It was very, very cool.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite characters on the series.
He was so good. Every time he was on, you watched him.
Yeah, I watched My Little Pony because of him.
See, I wasn't into that. I didn't watch any of that.
Just his voice,
Yeah.
Loved it.
So just a word on My Little Pony. It's I have this idea in the back of my head where I want to do a pony episode, but I'm not a pony fan. So if you're a My Little Pony fan, and especially if you're a brony, I want to hear from you. So just drop us a line on our Facebook page or reach out to us by email because we'd like to get you on the show. So going back to Star Wars, Dan, as an adult, the big marketing merchandising machine that Star Wars is keeps rolling, and I don't want that to influence your answer, but some would say that is sort of the sole purpose of Star Wars is to sell merch. But same question for you. As an adult, what does the franchise mean to you now?
I don't know. It's always a good story. It's always exactly what I expect it to be. It's 2 hours, 2+ hours, someplace else. You know, whenever through my entire life, there's always been at least a Star Wars thing that I could go and watch on VHS or watch on beta or watch on pay-per-view or whatever. And so when the world starts getting rough and I don't want to be around this place anymore, I can, you know, pop that in and for 2 hours, I'm not having to deal with it.
It's funny because I think all the fandoms they're like that warm hug,
they're an escape,
old friend. And that I think that's
place,
one of those overlap things where we all can agree that that's something that we can lean into when we just don't want to anything.
Right.
You know, it's always going to be there in some form or another, and we know the ones that make us feel, you know, the best or will, you know, elicit a certain mood from us because of the elements that we like about it.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, as far as the marketing and toys and all that kind of stuff, we came into the shop this evening, you know, looking around, and you know, for what year was it? 1981 for Empire.
80.
Okay, so I had just turned 9 or 10.
Sure.
And I got the Snow Trooper.
Yeah.
And my birthday's in November, and so I tucked it in my jacket pocket on November 21st, and off I trucked to school.
Yep.
And somewhere between my house and school, it fell in the snow and gone.
Oh.
So I had it for 1 day. So I'm getting it back this evening with the gun and everything, which I guarantee I would have lost as a kid.
So give it to Kelly, and you don't put it in your pocket.
Yeah, no, I'm not putting it in my pocket. Mommy, will you hold this for me?
It's going on a shelf.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you look at, and it just, you know, you're sort of cheapening it by selling Dole grapes with Anakin Skywalker in his pod racer helmet.
Yeah.
Okay, really? There's not a single grape.
I remember a banana.
Pretty sure.
The bananas having some franchise sticker on it and going,
Chiquita bananas.
Yeah, how does my banana equate to? It didn't make sense to me. Like that's a level of marketing that I just can't comprehend.
Yeah, I love how Mel Brooks made fun of that in Spaceballs.
Yeah,
like, merchandising.
Yeah,
it's like, totally.
Spaceballs, the flamethrower.
Was it Spaceballs the sequel? We're gonna need some more money.
The search for more money.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, they market the crap out of everything, and I mean, you know, more power to them. They learned the secret sauce about what appeals to kids. Oh, okay, you've got the 3.5-inch figure. Well, now let's put out an 8-inch figure. Now let's put out a 12-inch figure. Oh, you have Han Solo in his best in gear.
What would it have hit as heavy without Star Wars? I mean, this is something we talk about on the other episode quite heavily about, you know, Lucas and you know, his savvy about giving up a portion of his director's fees for sole merchandising and marketing rights, right? Like he really...
That was the smartest move.
And
if he was going for the dollar.
But not only was it a smart move for him, the studio at the time said sure, because to them it was a cost-saving measure. They don't have to pay him as much. Mm-hmm. Because before Star Wars, marketing a movie or marketing a television show was largely unsuccessful. It just never took off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, I remember we had... At my grandmother's house, we had the old 12-inch G.I. Joes that had been my uncle's.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly who they had belonged to before they came to us, but we had a Sesame Street playset from Fisher-Price.
Yep.
And the Fisher-Price farm.
Yeah, of course.
With the little moo when you open the door.
I think that went around to everybody.
I think everybody had either that one, and we all just took turns with it, or, you know, we all had some experience with Tonka or Fisher-Price or something. And they were non-specific. They were never in support of something that you thought was cool. It's a farmer. It's a fireman. It's
exactly. They were
player.
general play sets and action figures at that time really were themed according to, you know, an occupation.
Right.
Less about an intellectual property.
Right. And I mean, you know, if we'd had something, a popular iteration of The Sword and the Stone or something like that, something you could get behind that a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old wouldn't find scary, then yeah, you probably would have been able to market better. But things like the Black Cauldron or Sword in the Stone were probably a little over the head of most 6-year-olds. But hey, that the big space bear.
Well, and
we can do that.
In the classic Disney era, I mean, you're talking 2 films. Now, wait. Now, Black Cauldron, was that a Bluth movie?
No, I believe
was it Disney?
I believe that was Disney.
We're talking 2 of the darker, outings for that company. So that was kind of risky for them at the time. So I guess when I think about, where I am in my life now, and I think about, my attraction to Transformers and kind of what it means to me now, it's one of those things that's evolved. Like, it's evolved so much over the years, and it's never really stagnated. It's one of the few toy lines that have, and people, find it surprising when I mention this, that Transformers has never been off the toy shelves. There's never been a year without Transformers since 1984. It may have been, some years were better than others, but there was always a line of Transformers on the shelf every year. It's part of our, collective conscious, really.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the first time we came to your house and I saw your Transformer collection, the 12-year-old me was like, "Oh my god!"
I think I was more excited than you, though.
He's got Rodimus Prime.
Yeah.
But then to know that, like, for me as a modern toy collector, like when I say, like, no, these aren't original G1s. These are all modern. These are like within 10 years old, but yet you look at Optimus Prime and roughly any iteration of Optimus Prime, and it's pretty obvious that's who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe it's that classic archetype, good versus evil, but I mean, it's so ingrained in me that Optimus Prime is the ultimate good guy. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Transformers and Star Wars collectively have gone a long way to influence me in a lot of the things I've done. Like, on some level, Transformers really influenced my decision to become a professional soldier and to, carry some of the values that I carry. Like Optimus Prime's tagline is, freedom is the right of all sentient, beings. And I kind of share in that, we all deserve our own little slice of freedom. And they say you never meet your heroes, right? But I got to tell you, there's one year Kim and I went to the annual Transformer convention in Toronto, and it was the year that Peter Cullen was speaking. And I'd never met Peter before. I'd always wanted to. And so we paid for the meet and greet. And I got to tell you, I've never met a more humble, giving entertainer who was so just humble. Like, he just knew that,
We've only met 2 like that.
Yeah, that's so true.
Peter Cullen and
Doug
Jones.
Oh, and Doug Jones. I was going to say Dean Cain.
Dean Cain was very good as well.
Sure.
To be that genuine, you felt like you could sit at their kitchen table and totally you'd be welcome and it wouldn't be creepy. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean. But then after we met him and we went and sat in the hall and we listened to his Q&A, and the question comes up, and you can YouTube this if you haven't seen it, because the story doesn't really change. The inspiration for the Optimus Prime character, where he came from and how he was developed. And it was a story about, Peter going and talking to his brother who had been in the military, and his brother had basically told him, listen, if you're going to be a hero, it's like, you got to be a real hero. Don't be one of those fake pretend heroes, like the John Wayne type, he's like, just be genuine. And he's like, that's what I tried to bring to the role. And it's stuck with me, like, about just being who you are and being genuine and being, just good. Because the idealist in me wants to believe that everybody inherently is good. We're not bad people. Just bad things happen that make us do strange things that can be perceived as evil and wrong. But yeah, I mean, I don't mean to get so heavy, but it's been a big part of my life, and it continues to be a big part of my life. And I'm just glad that, that people are still relating to it. So that's my Transformer story.
Yeah. I think Stephen King, in his book on writing, he was talking about an interview he'd done where someone asked him how he was able to write such believable bad guys.
Sure.
And he says, the person that you're writing about doesn't think of themselves as a bad guy.
No.
They're the center of their whole story.
Yeah.
And everything they do has a completely logical reason for happening. And everybody else is being weird and driving
Yeah,
them
that's
to do
right.
this horrible thing.
Yeah.
And they've been left no other choice. But I always
I
found that
agree with
really
that.
interesting.
That is interesting.
No villain thinks of themselves as the villain. They always think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, they always think of
and
themselves as the
everybody
hero of the
else
story.
is.
Yeah.
Nobody else is thinking straight, but they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't see it.
Well, I guess it's a pretty good segue into how each of us, expressions of fandom, and what are some of the ways that we show it, and we've touched on it briefly, but because our recording space just happens to be in a toy store,
Toy mecca.
I mean, if that
It's collectibles.
It's
not toys.
It's
And
not
if you
toys. It's collectible figurines.
I guess really, and just going back for a second, really, my love of Transformers, how it's allowed me to do this. If I didn't love pop culture and all those things that go with it, I never would have gotten to where we are right now recording this. So, thank you, Transformers, for that. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to my expression of fandom, well, I mean, it's no secret. I mean, I might have a mild.
You have the coolest basement I have ever seen.
Yeah, and I mean, I do.
I've got some things in there too.
You do.
Yes.
I meant you collectively, the both of you.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a pretty elaborate toy collection, but
I like to call it the museum.
Yes.
on some levels it is. It's a
Yeah.
very chaotic museum right now, but I mean, the toys are obviously my ultimate expression of that fandom. I love them. I love being able to revisit those characters that are 35 plus years old and seeing new iterations of them that instantly take me back to, oh, this is the character I fell in love with. So yeah, and then more recently, I guess I took it to a whole other level when I finally got my first piece of fan art tattooed on my body. And
I wonder what it is.
well, it's not Optimus Prime's head, but I honestly thought about it. But yeah, I finally was ready to wear my fandom quite literally on my chest, and now I sport a very sizable Autobot logo.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive actually. He did a really good job on that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's one of the best things about fandom in general, though, is that everybody has their own way of expressing it and how they show it. And that's my next question for everybody is how do you express it? How do you show it? So why don't we start with you, Kim?
Well, okay. How do I express it? I don't know. I have a husband that is totally in it like crazy. So it's easy. It's easy for me to express it. We have the toy store, so it's easy for me to find a figure that I want and get. Like I think people know that we were married to other people before, and my first husband wasn't into any of this stuff. The girls weren't really into it. And so
Neither were my ex-wives.
exactly. So
I don't
it's
understand
easy.
how people can be like that.
Yeah.
That's like living with only one crayon in your crayon box.
Well, I thought so, but it's life, right? So you raise your kids. They always need something. That's where the money went. And he was a truck driver, so he's on the road, which is expensive. And so there wasn't any really extra for me to do the things I wanted or get the things. Now, the girls are older. We don't have that. And with you and I, we like it so much. It's just, oh, I like that. Okay, buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's,
for sure.
We can. It's so much. Like I have like a 3-foot Groot at home. That's friggin' awesome.
I love it.
I like to think
Ours
of myself
is only
as
15-inch.
Yeah. But it's the same mold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I like to think of myself as kind of the gateway for you on some level. I mean, I know you had all of before we ever got together, you had a very sizable book collection, and that fits right in. Well, that's
where, that was the one thing that I could afford, and that was my thing to, like Dan said earlier, like the escape, right? To kind of, books were my thing, and I love just to read. But getting with you, it was like, oh, now I could, I kind of like this. Can I get it?
Yeah.
And at first it was almost like, it seems silly. I know that might be the wrong, but I'm like, like the pop vinyl figures, they're cutesy and they're all this, and I collect them.
Yeah.
And I have some more like action figures that are like, the 8-inch, but I like it. I like going down. I have a very extensive collection.
We're getting a little weather tonight.
Yeah.
It's rolling in.
I like to go down in the museum. I have my books down there. I have my pops. I have my figures, and I like that area. I like the space.
Yeah, me too.
And the toy store, like, let's be honest, it's both our gateway.
Of course it is.
It's a dangerous thing for us.
Know.
On some level.
Talking about your basement, I could see that going down and reading and surrounded by all your belongings. In the 80s, there was I think it was HBO did it, Ray Bradbury Theater.
I remember Ray Bradbury Theater.
Yes.
Well, he walked into his room and it was panning around to all these little bits and bobs and trinkets and things. And this is my museum. This is where I get all my ideas. And hello.
Oh, yes.
Welcome
Ray's
to the
talking
crypt.
to you.
Are you sure this isn't your horror influence coming to say hello?
No. My stuff
Right
was a
on.
little less gothic in nature.
It's funny though, because talking about, merchandising and having this stuff and having these physical representations and coming back around to Star Wars, like you look at guys like Steve Sansweet, who made an entire career out of collecting. I mean, he took his love of Star Wars and collecting stuff. Steve Sansweet, for those of you who don't know, wrote the Star Wars Encyclopedia, has the world's largest catalog Star Wars collection, actually turned that into a job and was an archivist for Lucasfilm for many years. That's a little side story though. But yeah, Dan, what about you?
For me, I tend to jump from hobby to hobby as far as pursuit of all things nerd and sci-fi and things. So, I mean, I had for a time, I still have 2 3D printers.
Yeah.
And I'm a fairly tinkery kind of guy, so
We could safely call you a maker.
yeah, I've made a thing or 3.
I would think so.
Absolutely.
So I found the cosplay community online on YouTube, and that was part of our meet cute was me going, okay, well, I think I've seen enough videos now that I feel confident enough I could spend $20 on a Nerf gun and paint it up to look like something cool.
Yeah.
And, didn't really have the creativity, but I had the skill and I had the intent. So for me, I've spent the last 3-4 years making all manner of props and things like that, guns and shields and masks and helmets and swords.
I'm very much like that. I love prop items from the properties that I like, that I have, that I nerd out on. And so, like, to me, like the best example is the rude amount, and it's not about the money, but we spent a rude amount of money on Star Trek costumes when the new Star Trek movie, the 2009 movie came out, and we were just like, yeah, we're going to do this. So, I mean, we have genuine Star Trek uniforms and phaser props and stuff that are just like, oh. The whole cosplay thing. Now I don't get it on the level that I'm active in that community, because I'm not, but we all have been to the conventions and we've all seen it, and we all go, that's so freaking cool. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, like, it's like, oh, I wish I had that guy or that girl's skills to do that. And I just don't. Mm-hmm. But you guys are both. I mean, you've been to our Halloween parties, and you guys costume pretty well.
You guys are like, awesome.
Mal and Jane last time.
Yeah.
Yes. We were Marty and Doc.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Great Scott.
That was great.
And I mean, you were in the preliminary notes.
Yeah.
There was something about mashup and inspired by it.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Realistic thing. I mean, you're Marty and Doc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a married couple, or in this case, just a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Drew a whole new dynamic into that relationship.
I saw a photo online yesterday, and it was a female cosplayer cosplaying Hulk Hogan at the height of Hulkamania.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Complete with the big mustache and
the Fu Manchu,
the buff. God. Yeah. And
good for her.
I'm always amazed when I see these cosplayers, and I always wonder, like, some of them are obvious, like when you see like the Iron Man that's decked out in the Boba Fett colors, or conversely the Boba Fett that's decked out in the Iron Man colors, and you get sort of the bend on it. But some of them I'm like, is that, what are you mixing that with? And is that is that an inspired thing? Like you wanted to mash these two things together, or was it
probably
sort
they
of
like them both, and to that
Yeah.
person who's doing it, they feel awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple that are just like, wow, that has so many layers. I never would have put those two things together. But somebody put a lot of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Or they did the old, I've got a dice of Star Trek characters in this hand, and I got a dice with Star Wars characters in this hand. Let's see who we're mixing up today.
So
that'd be fun too.
There's another one for the to the cosplay community who might be listening to this show. Why don't you drop us a line and give us your thoughts on the whole combining of ideas and bending your cosplays? Because I really would like to explore this a little bit more in a future show.
You're listening to Fandom Power.
So I want to go back to the whole music thing for a second, Kelly.
Yeah.
So there's this band in Toronto, and they're called the Cybertronic Spree. And if you've never seen them before, they dress up in Transformer costumes. And I don't mean like, we put some makeup on. I'm talking like the drummer dresses like a Quintesson, which is like a guy with like 5 faces and vines for arms. The lead singer is like RC from the 86 movie. And I mean, they regularly make a show out of playing the 86 movie soundtrack, and that's kind of their shtick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
I would recognize some of those songs.
Yeah, me too. That takes that whole cosplay thing and that music thing, and it just says to me that there are just so many different ways that a fan can put themselves out there to show their love of something. And like that just combines two of my favorite things. I love Transformers and I love rock and roll music. So that's a pretty cool one.
Yes.
I haven't said it yet, but I never watched the Transformers. Like I know of, but, and I like the
Apparently
movies.
We'll have Dragon Slayer and the Transformers.
We'll have homework later.
Yeah, we'll have homework.
Well,
we'll get locked in a room.
Fortunately for both of you, Kim, I own every episode of G1 Transformers, and Dan, I own Dragon Slayer and Excalibur on DVD.
There you
so you can definitely borrow some research material if you'd like.
Well, it seems like you and Kelly in that aspect are the go-to Transformer.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, here's one for you, Kelly. Transformers or GoBots?
I like classic Transformers.
I do like Transformers as well. It is really the Star Wars versus Star Trek question. And I guess what I really wanted to know is, as fans, is there room for both at the same table? Because, I mean, we all like them.
Yeah, if I asked for a Transformers kit, I probably would get a GoBot, if I got anything at all.
Yeah.
Because
they were
probably
cheaper.
The discount basket kind of thing.
For sure.
Right.
And, you'd have grandparents who wouldn't know the difference, But
I thought they were doing good,
and I would probably just be happy to get that. It wouldn't I wouldn't have really cared.
Transforming robot toy craze of the 1980s and grandparents were two things that just were round block into square hole. That's what that was, right?
Yeah. So like honestly, I'd probably enjoy both. I think that's a cool idea. You can have 2 objects, one transforms into the other. That was cool. That was so amazing. Cool. I loved that. I love that idea. And I love the cartoon. I was less about the movies. I liked, the first one, but then it kind of petered out for me, after a while. But I'm all about the original cartoon and the original movie, and
did you
I love
go all
the soundtrack.
The way, did you get all the way through it though? You guys have seen the Bumblebee movie?
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. Sydney recommended it to us. Our daughter did. And she's like, I think you'd like this. A lot of 80s music, Mom.
It was pretty good.
I think the Bumblebee movie, once they decided to finally admit that this is going to be a soft reboot of that franchise, made more sense. And that's the way that I went into it, with like, you know what? I don't care that they say that this is tying in everything, because it really doesn't, other than a young Simmons, Agent Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
I choose to see Bumblebee as being this soft reboot of the franchise, and it works far better on that level.
Yes, I love the classic Bumblebee look. You know, the Camaro thing just, confused me.
the Camaro in the parking lot smacking the VW Bug with the door, as like a like, oh, like I was a little disappointed that they treated it that way, but definitely redeeming in Bumblebee.
Yes, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would, and it was a good recommendation. For sure.
It was pretty good.
So let's change gears a minute and let's talk about being a fan in 2020 versus being a fan, say, in 1980 or even in 1990. I mean,
in 1980 I was 5.
Okay, so but
I was already 10.
All right, so let's pull it forward. Let's come a little bit more forward and think about it.
Late 80s, early 90s, yes.
As adults, I was having this conversation in the hardware store with one of the guys who is also very much into fandom. I mean, he's an artist, graphic artist, a couple different mediums. And when I was sort of explaining what we were doing in the show, and his exclamation was, "We won!" Meaning that the nerd culture has now become the norm. So I guess really the next question I want to dive into is, was there ever a time in your life, in your adult life, that you felt you had to keep your fandom a secret?
It was funny. When I first started one of my jobs, I was put into the engineering department, and I felt like my nerd mask was put on, like I found my people. They started talking about shows that I liked, and I'm like, oh my God, I can talk about this at work. Like it felt so good to talk about things. And they introduced me to Firefly. We actually saw the movie Serenity before we saw Firefly, and they've been talking about it for like a year behind me. And I'm like, I get it now. I get that reference. Okay. So it was great because, it was kind of interesting though, because of my age, there were some older people there that wouldn't understand that stuff. And I felt like I was the translator at times because, I'd say, okay, that's more like, that old show MASH or, Barney Miller. Yeah. Right. I'd reference older shows to them and, reference newer shows to the younger guys. So I felt like I was kind of the one in between. But
that's pretty cool.
It was great because those guys were excellent. And, it was so awesome to find my people at work. But yeah, I felt like, especially as a girl, like, I liked some of the more masculine things like Knight Rider and G.I. Joe I loved. And He-Man. Oh my God, I loved He-Man more, like give me the sword. I loved it.
We're going to have you back for the Masters of the Universe episode, especially knowing, I don't mean to cut you off, but knowing that there's a new Netflix series coming out by Kevin Smith. So very much looking forward to that. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine. But, I felt more gender-based kind of hiding it than, nerd based. I didn't care about that kind of thing. I would wear mismatched socks and didn't care what I wore. Didn't really care about that. I didn't really have a fandom when I was younger, so I didn't hide anything because I didn't really have anything until I was a later teenager. But, it felt more gender based to me. Like, I wanted that Transformer and I got a glitter kitty sweater that year. And it's like, they don't even know me.
I feel like there's that whole, like for me, there definitely was like, I could per se go and talk about a Star Wars movie, or I could go and talk about an episode of Knight Rider because everybody was watching it and we could all say, yes, I watched it. This is what I liked about it. This is what I didn't like about it. And then the conversation ended. It never really dove into that, like, how cool is this? And there was no like that fantasizing part of it. That just didn't happen. But for me, one of my earliest fandoms was role-playing games, so like Dungeons and Dragons. And of course that really came with that whole stigma of it was the gateway to Satan, right? It was the whole satanic panic of the 1980s. So that explains a lot. You're darn tootin'. I kept my mouth tight-lipped about a lot of stuff that I just did not want to, like, it was okay selectively amongst your friends once you'd sort of sussed out, are you one of us? And once that link was established, sure, it's game on. But to the general public, and even to my friend, Kim can attest to this because we went to the same high school, there are people that you would never even admit.
True. And I remember going, now I don't know whose house it was at, but a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine and I went to someone's house, and
Oh,
you were
keep saying
there.
this is my house, but I don't think it was mine.
I don't remember who it was, but you were there.
It's probably Dan's house.
It could have been Dan's house.
Not you, Dan, but another Dan.
I figured I don't remember either of you from my youth. It's a long commute.
You guys were playing D&D, and we come in, and you guys got very like...
All stop.
Who are you? Why are you here? You're girls. You can't be here.
Mm.
And it was very like... definitely a change in vibe.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like, your little thing, we gotta go.
I think as young boys who were just, it was that thing. It was like, remember in the Little Rascals how our gang, they had the He-Man Woman Haters Club?
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that. And I mean, that there's that gender-based stereotyping where that's kind of where we were. It was our nerd thing, and we couldn't figure out, why would you want to be a part of this? Now, I'm not saying that that's how we all felt, and certainly as an adult, and my love of role-playing has never really diminished. I mean, my bookshelf really is kind of testament to that. I mean, I read more than I play, but as an adult, especially since we've been married, and then having different women come in and play, I maintain that a woman at your gaming table adds a layer that you just don't get without them. So absolutely, you should be involved.
I agree. I think it's hard it was hard for me to join the D&D group.
Yeah.
Because it was 3 guys and me. And you 3 guys had played since you were teenagers. I knew it, but I never played. So it was awkward because you guys had like, oh, I know what monster that is, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, I don't know what it is. I'll kick it in the face. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't kick it in the face. That's...
Yeah.
So
It takes your legs right off.
Exactly. So you say it's good, and I believe you, and I think it is good, but it can be a little like...
It's intimidating.
It's intimidating because like I had these 3 guys. They're like, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, well, I was, but now I'm not sure.
That's the meta part when you've been playing for 20 plus years and you as a player know what the objectives and know what the obstacles are, and the game mechanics.
Oh, I totally get that.
It gets very meta, and I think the problem was with us was not realizing that we were speaking kind of meta, realizing our characters know nothing about this, but we as players, we do. Mm-hmm. And you as somebody who's just new getting introduced to that, it can throw you off very quickly.
It did a little. Like, I think it was awesome because you guys would talk in like,
I never would have done that.
And I do, and you had all these voices, and I'm like, can I just sit here and watch? Because this is, this is fun.
Yeah.
That's part of it. That's part of the fun though, right? Is embracing that. And that's part of embracing the fandom, right? Getting into character. And, I was never a dramatic arts student. I just wasn't an actor, but, role playing and dice. Sure, I'll make silly character voices and try to get into it. It's fun.
But I was probably where you were in high school, the nervous, like, oh no,
sure.
not sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Where now you guys are like, yeah, this is, it's all fun. It's all good, but it's different.
So what about you, Kim? Did you ever feel like there was a time where you kind of had to, I know you say like when you were married before, you just didn't have the exposure to it, but the things that you were into, did you feel like you had to, like it was your thing that you couldn't share with anybody?
Well, I've always been the type of person that I like unique things. I like things like I don't have to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I've kind of embraced that. I've never felt like I've had to hide it. However, like we said earlier, like we have the museum in the basement in the family room. Well, I have a hair salon in the house as well, and it's in a room that's beside the museum. And we go to conventions and we get autographs and we meet these celebrities, and some of those things have come into the shop.
Oh, it's so much fun.
And I love it. And I thought, it's my hair salon. It's my things I enjoy.
Yeah.
And they've been in the salon, and, you have these older generation or whoever. And
people who aren't into it.
Right. Yeah. And they just don't get it. Right. Or if the doors are open to the museum and they see in, they're like, whose are those? And I'm like, well, they're ours. And they're like, well, why? Why would you do this?
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that I have to hide it. I'm just like, look, you don't get it. It's okay. I've got people saying like, "Is this pictures of your family?"
Oh, that's the best.
And I'm like, "Yes, they
Yes.
are."
Gerard is my second uncle on my mother's side.
You know, yes.
You know, there's a cast shot of all of the hobbits. Are those your cousins?
Yes, they are.
I did all of their hair for this photo.
That's right.
And so it's not really like hiding. You know who you can talk to and know who you can't talk to, right? I'm not going to waste my time and energy. I have one lady, she's very sweet, and she's, you know, she just doesn't get it. She's like, "Why would you spend your money on this? Why would you? I don't get it." I'm like, "That's okay. You don't have to."
Yeah.
Right? Like,
again, if you can put on the uniform of your sports team and yell at your TV, I don't see anything wrong
I
with
had
it.
said to her,
You continue to watch Maple Leaf games?
well, most people collect something, right? Like spoons or thimbles or whatever, right?
Or kitsch of some kind.
Right, something, right?
My mother alone was collectible spoons, commemorative plates to every province and every state because my dad was a truck driver. And then my two older brothers were pennants. Remember, like just triangular felt pennants? Pennants. So whenever Mom would get a plate and a spoon, my brothers would get a pennant for their bedroom. And so, everybody, like you say, everybody's got their thing.
It's okay, honey, relax. Penance. I know you're Catholic, but it's all behind you now.
I prefer the felt kind.
But this is a good way to touch on sort of like, you know, people going back to that whole fandom, you know, even a decade ago wasn't really a word that was tossed around, but like people who aren't into this stuff, don't kid yourself. You're a fan of something and you have your fandom, and like whether it's your you know, maybe you know, you're my dad who would read those penny Western, you know, Zane Grey, right? You've got
Louis L'Amour.
Yeah, Louis L'Amour. If you've read a bajillion Western books, guess what? That's your fandom, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's your thing. You like it. I just think we're in a real renaissance time to be able to express it without having to wear any of the shame that maybe was
for sure.
I think it's completely
lumped onto it.
Done the other way, where now it's like if you are into it and you are kind of a nerd, you're even cooler now. Yeah. Right?
On
like,
some
and if
level,
you're not,
sure. And
then you're the weirdo.
That goes back to the guy at the hardware store. We won.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Dan? Did you ever have to hide it or hide anything?
Absolutely, yeah.
For sure, eh?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I grew up in Toronto, in what I guess is still called Woodbridge.
Okay.
But it was predominantly first-generation Canadians of European descent, and at the time, and they were into different things than me. And I was tall and skinny and of English descent. And not from Italy or Spain or Portugal or any of the wonderful exotic places.
Sure.
I just spoke English at home. Had bologna sandwiches. My life was painfully boring, and I wanted nothing more than to be like have some other language in my back pocket, or go home and have Mom make me some fancy food from the old country. For me, it was roast beef and bologna. And, you know, my mom's a great cook, but she wasn't always. My grandmother was not a good cook. If you couldn't boil it, we weren't eating it. And so,
don't they call that sous vide now?
Yeah, sous vide.
Or sous vide. Sous vide,
yeah. But, you know, so I wanted nothing to do with the kids that were picking on me at school. And so my way was to come home and read comic books or play with Transformers or watch G.I. Joe or watch Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or any of the hundreds of things that my brain attached itself to as a kid. And occasionally I could be involved with the group outside riding bikes or playing street hockey. But when you went outside and you were doing those things, you'd been invited to take part in their world. The last thing you did, if you ever expected to be invited back, was bring any of that baggage with you.
Oh, gotcha.
Because nobody wants to, you know, we're playing street hockey, pause, car, you know, hey, did you see the new Battlestar Galactica was on the other day? Starbuck and Apollo really kicked butt, didn't they? What are you talking about?
Right.
We don't need a goalie. Go back in the house.
Yeah, and you're afraid of that.
Yeah, and so, you know, in my neighborhood, you just, if you had anything that wasn't sports related or car related or, you know,
you
just sort of kept that stuff to yourself.
What I really appreciate about this topic is just like we all sort of have this shared escapism through different medium. But really, like these, I don't know what the word is, escapist forms of media or entertainment are the things that we love. And the more compelling story is what we were escaping from. And that to me is just such a, you know, it's funny, you know, a lot of this stuff is kind of like tragic on some level.
Yeah.
But yet,
it's the escape hatch.
Yeah. But yet these things have become so powerful and so meaningful in our lives that, you know, on some level they've continued to give us some sense of purpose and some sense of belonging. And when we get together with like-minded people and we can share that, it just, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it just makes me feel a little bit more complete.
Yeah. I mean, you know, things are a little muddy and confusing and scary right now. Yeah. But, you know, if you ask any adult, would you want to go back and be a 9-year-old child again?
Oh,
be it a boy
no.
or girl? It's like, it depends on the day. School day or, you know, like a rain day when I pretend like I'm sick and I got to stay home in my room. My mom's going to bring me a sandwich and I get to play with all my favorite toys all day.
I mean, if
absolutely, I want to be that guy.
I just want to be Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, Bueller.
You can be my Cameron.
There you go.
You got to have a Ferrari though.
I'll do what I can. Nice. Can I paint my cobalt red? I'll chop the
roof off.
Chop the roof off and roof off. We'll be good.
Okay. So I guess that something else I think was interesting, and when I was sort of thinking about the direction I wanted to go with the show, and it was sort of like, well, you know, kind of dating myself, but you know, like having to hide stuff. But what about fandom pre-internet? It was a much different landscape then, and how you connected to your thing and how you stayed in touch with it. And the big one for me that I remember, and there were a lot of them at the time, but you don't see them very much anymore, is the old fanzines.
Yes.
Did you read any fanzines?
Like I liked Fangoria.
Fangoria,
yeah. I couldn't get it very often,
No.
but if I, you know, got a really nice cousin who would give me their copy or something,
sure,
you know, or find it at a yard sale or something, you know, I might luck out. But I liked that kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, having to wait a month or longer between publications to find out what was going on with the thing that you loved, and then this is sort of at a time when, you know, sequels weren't a guarantee. So how deep can we dive on the thing? You know, if your fandom was one particular film and, you know, we're going to dedicate an entire magazine to it, that's a big deal. But then you have things like Starlog, which just was like this indispensable treasure trove of Trek when there was when Trekkie or Trekker wasn't even a word, you know? Right. So yeah, fanzines, I guess. How about you, Dan? Did you read any fanzines?
Yeah, again, Fangoria, Starlog on occasion when I could find it. There were one or two other ones, but their names escape me at the moment. Yeah. But they were more horror based. So,
when we were dating, I would buy you the PlayStation magazine. I think
that
that's kind of that was like my
yeah.
candy to you. I buy you candy. I bring you a PlayStation magazine.
I've got the new magazine.
You know what I liked about
it? Has a sample CD.
Yeah. That's the reason why I would never buy. That was the sole reason for me buying PlayStation magazine. It's what's on the demo disc this month.
Yeah. Yep.
And if the demo disc was good, I bought the issue. If it wasn't, I didn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, trying to find if like you were really into something like Alien between what was it, 81 when the first one came out?
Oh, Alien or
78?
Aliens? 78, 79? The Ridley Scott Alien. Yeah. The 70s, late 70s.
And I mean, it was many years later. So, I mean, if you wanted anything else Alien, you had to go and find the book by Dan O'Bannon, I guess it was. Yeah. And hope that maybe they mentioned something else. Yeah. And maybe the librarian was smart enough to, that's this guy and he wrote this other thing.
Sure.
And, you know, maybe you'd find something. But again, in my neighborhood, there was nobody else I could talk to about it. So it was like, did you see that movie Alien? What are you talking about? You know.
How about you, Kim? Did you ever read any of the fan-focused magazines?
I did not.
No.
Tiger Beat?
Was, sure, yeah,
Tiger
I guess.
Beat.
Tiger Beat.
Why not?
Yeah, I did that. I did, you know, my whole wall was all the pictures.
Sure.
I did do that. But I didn't do anything, you know, if there was a movie and then something else. No, I didn't do that. And I don't know. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so any money I did have came from babysitting. If I, you know what I mean? So money was a real issue, and we lived in the country, and the parentals aren't going to drive you into the next town to get. So it was very hard for me as a young kid to get anything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like a Tiger Beat was like so exciting, or the Archie. I love getting the Archie comics.
Archie
that's
comics,
what I read, right? And that was a treat, right? So that's kind of few and far between those little things.
Yeah, I was saying to Kelly yesterday, I mean, I feel sort of kind of bad. I mean, hearing the three of you talk about living in Peterborough, it was a much smaller town, I assume, in the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
And Bancroft and Bob Cajun, you know.
Very much
For me, I grew up in Toronto, so I had TTC at my doorstep.
Gosh.
My mom and my dad were both gainfully employed, made good money, came home every day. We had owned our own home.
Yep.
You know, so we were firmly middle class. It didn't inspire me to go out and, I have all these things at my disposal. I'm going to go and get that Tiger Beat magazine, and I'm going to go and get that Archie thing just because I can. It just doesn't even occur at the time.
Totally different how
we were. I would say that we were well off too. Like both my parents did. Well, they worked at different times on and off. My dad predominantly was the breadwinner, but he was making great money. And I have to be honest with you, like I did not suffer for birthdays and Christmas. But outside of that, there was no treats or can I have a toy or can I get this? There was none of that. But Christmas and birthdays seemed to kind of make up for that, because I can remember having a pretty sizable action figure collection even at like 12, right? But
I was going to say, I remember coming downstairs on a Christmas and, you could barely see the tree.
Yeah.
Like you certainly could have fallen forward from the edge of the toys and not touched the tree.
Yeah, same with us.
And, you had to spend, you spend 45 minutes unwrapping and then you spend 3 hours bringing the crap up to your room and finding a hole, putting everything away.
I believe as a parent talking to my younger self, I would say I was spoiled.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with at least on my end. I didn't know you as a child, but
no,
I certainly had my share of stuff.
So
I think that's the difference is like my parents both worked and they provided. There just wasn't extra to go around.
Yeah.
Right. And as a kid, you don't really like. I know my cousins. I'd always think, they're getting everything.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're not getting that. Or if you ask for something, it's probably 2 years after that you get it. Right? Like, so we still got stuff, but it wasn't on the level of...
Boy, in the toy world, you'd be lucky if you got it 2 years after it came out.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Sure,
like, it's just... That's just how we live. Like, it just wasn't... And so if you wanted that magazine or you wanted that toy, you had to save for it. Like, it was a...
For sure.
You better make sure you really want it because you're saving for a while for it. Right? So I think now as an adult, when I can just go, I want that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And you don't even have to leave your house to get it.
No, exactly.
That for me has almost gotten addictive now, like especially with COVID.
For
like
sure.
I could order that thing. Like, when I was a kid, I couldn't get that, magazine all the time or even a book that I wanted.
Yeah.
And the thing I collected as a kid was the movie posters from the previous month's rentals.
Yeah.
So I, searched through their bin of dollar movies, movie posters, and that's what I collected,
The local store would hold them for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, hold these posters for
me. And I'd pick, and I'd, when I had saved for one, I'd be like, I don't care what's in there, I'm picking one of them.
Exactly.
Because that was my collection.
Yeah.
I can remember racing to the local video store and basically trying to convince the clerk or the owner, like, hey, when you're done advertising this movie, can I have the poster? And if you were lucky, you were first in line, or if
can
not,
I have the standee?
Yeah, sorry, it's already spoken for.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I guess it was the odd issue of Starlog. I have an eccentric uncle, but don't we all, I guess?
Oh, yeah.
I have an eccentric uncle who is a huge Star Trek fan, so like every now and then I would be exposed to things like Starlog, and I'd read like one or two. I didn't ever buy any, But really, the fanzines that I kind of gravitated towards were like the Dungeon magazine and Dragon magazine, the official pulp. Dungeons and Dragons that supported the game. And they just added a whole extra level of, playability to your game, because it was a regular infusion of new material to keep that adventure going. And I really enjoyed those so much that when Wizards of the Coast had a license for Star Wars, they started producing Star Wars Gamer, and I immediately latched onto that and I subscribed to it and bought every issue until it went out. And then shortly after that, I can remember lamenting when I read that, this is going to be the final issue of Dragon magazine, and from here on out, we're going to go digital. And now I don't even think they exist in that format anymore. Oh. But back in 1985, there was a little animated space opera made its way over to North American television called Robotech. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of guys in Quebec actually launched the official Robotech fan club, and they had a little, I don't want to call it a magazine. It's technically, yes, it's a fanzine, but it was really like a 1 or 2 pager called Protoculture
More like
Addicts.
A flyer than a magazine.
Yeah. Protoculture Addicts. And my buddy Hank, who you guys are going to hear later on in future episodes, had a couple of those kicking around when we were kids, and I just loved reading them and going through them and poring over all this extra stuff that kind of took me deeper into that universe.
Yeah, you were talking about collecting online and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I almost think it cheapens it, because when I was a kid, I would have sold my sister and my dog to get the
Andrea.
To get the AT-AT playset
for sure.
Oh my God, it's got like laser beam sounds and the head moves, and oh my God. I've got a buddy who's got 3 of them.
Yeah.
I've got another buddy who's got one, and he's like, yeah, it's in a closet somewhere. I'm
really?
Like, really?
And they don't have any connection to it?
Well, I'm sure the one fella does, because he's of the appropriate age.
Well, if he's got 3 of them.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's
he's got a wicked toy collection too.
Well, here's the thing, I agree with you. I don't know if I like it as much as I did pre-COVID, but all of that aside, and I've talked about this many times with many different people, we're at a point now where, depending on what it is you collect, especially for modern toys, and particularly stuff that's made by Hasbro, if you are not pre-ordering it online, you're not going to get it. There's just such horrible distribution issues with that company right now, where it really is kind of your best bet is, as soon as you know it's coming, find an online retailer and get your pre-order in, because the days of going out and hunting the toy aisles for those things are virtually...
Well, unfortunately, now we have... It's not only the collectors, but there's people out there who don't collect, but they know they can make money off it.
The auctioneers.
Right. Yeah. So they're going out and they see, this new figure and it's a popular one. Well, I'm going to buy every single one that's on the shelf, because then I can mark it up and I can make these people who want it pay twice as much.
Yeah. Like we're seeing... I know this is we can have a whole show just about this.
Let's not, because this one will make me angry.
Yeah. But when I'm seeing a 6-inch action figure showing up on the secondary market the day that it hits retail for 300% of retail, it's definitely aggravating. And
well, even with us having the toy store, we try and keep the prices reasonable, right? We are a business, yes, but we're collectors. And so we appreciate that. And we're not trying to gouge anybody. And tons of times, especially when we're at toy shows, you guys have helped us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure, I don't know if you've run into it, but people are like, oh, that's a really great price, right? They're almost surprised at what we're selling something because...
what's wrong with it?
Right. And so it's like, look, price, we're making that little bit. Here it is, we don't need to make, 500% or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing it for the joy.
Yeah. That's right.
The one that bugged me was, we were helping you guys at one of your shows.
Yeah.
And somebody came up and spotted a rare item that you had. And they, the price was reasonable. It was directly in line with what you could have got if you had looked online for it.
Yep.
And they start haggling and trying to knock you down and knock you down and knock you down. And they eventually caved and came back and paid you the full price that you were asking.
Yep.
And then they walked over to their bin, put it in their bin with a sticker, $100 more.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, that is shitty and low, because you didn't want it.
Me.
You didn't want it to put on your shelf.
No.
If you wanted it for
again.
you or your grandkid, absolutely. Take it at this price. No harm, no foul. I'll make $1 on it, but you give her.
Right.
Yeah.
But for you to just be crappy and low, and it's like, oh, you're going to make $1? Haha, loser, I'm going to make 110.
Over the years.
Even to do it at the same show, like, just, it was kind of blatant to me. I'm like, I get, consumerism and that, but, that was just kind of tacky to me.
And that's kind of the unwritten rule, I feel. We've been doing it for about 4 years, and you don't do that. Like, we've bought stuff for the purpose of reselling.
Yep.
But if we were to buy something at a show, it goes underneath the table. We deal with it later. It never goes on our table.
It's not going back up for sale.
And that's just kind of an unwritten rule.
Yeah, the etiquette, show etiquette.
Etiquette, yeah. Like, we're all in it. It's a business. We get it. But and like I said earlier, there's these certain, group of people that all they see is dollar signs. And they see us as collectors, they'll pay whatever. Right. And because we're collectors as well as vendors, it's that fine line. It just, I wish they'd just get out of it.
You can get that vibe, though. I find that going into some of these, collectible stores, like ones I haven't been into before, you can kind of get the vibe if the owner's there, if they're in it for the money or if they're in there because they're fans.
Yeah.
And there are stores that I just walk out of. I'm like, no,
they're in it for the money. They have no idea.
Yeah, like, I just don't want to buy from you. I would be more excited to buy from another fan. Yeah. And pay a little bit more than buy from you. You just kind of seem.
I'm very curious to see what it's going to look like. There's a brand new Star Wars themed store that's popped up in Oshawa, and I've seen a couple of.
When are we going?
Well, this is it. I'm very curious to go down there, and I'd like to see what they're about. Like, is this just a?
What time do they close?
Are we like? Is this 100% capitalize on the merchandising aspect of Star Wars, or is this like? Much like what we do here, like it's a labor of love and it's a bit of a passion that kind of drives us to do it. But that's going to make for a fun road trip.
Yes.
I guess I'd like to, before we close off, I just want to go back to that whole hardware store story for a second when Ken said, we won. And really, I know that it's no longer on the air, and I'm a little sad for that, but I have to give props up to Chuck Lorre and the guys that made The Big Bang Theory, who largely popularized a lot of the stuff that we have always loved and admired and have made, part of that culturally, I don't want to say acceptable because it's always been acceptable, but now culturally maybe normalize it a little bit.
Well, we're the ones that made them so popular in a sense, right? Like,
right.
You look at Seinfeld. It's a group of friends that did their own thing, or even friends, right? Like, that we liked it, but The Big Bang talked about stuff we liked.
Yeah.
So they were like instantly our friends, instantly our family. It was a different vibe.
Yeah, we got that reference.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And none of us are like, leaders in our fields. None of us are physicists and engineers.
No, not in that regard. But
I think it started a little bit before
dabble
that.
A little, but
Like Big Bang Theory certainly brought it more, forefront.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing people at work, somebody was talking about, the nerd or something, and someone said, oh, someday they'll be your boss, though. So I think there was that little bit of change, but it was more of a, he's going to be running the company someday. Maybe we shouldn't be down talking him so much. But it wasn't as a positive, like Big Bang brought it.
But doesn't Big Bang really kind of address both of those? Because I think, contextually speaking, we go back and analyze nerd a little bit. Early on, like when you tossed out the word nerd, it usually referred to somebody who was brilliantly intelligent, maybe a little socially awkward.
Right.
But now we toss it out to all these pop culture things, and it's our nerd thing, and and we laugh about it and we embrace it.
Yeah, I think that the terms nerd and geek have been sort of
superfluous now.
Well, homogenized into one thing, really.
Yeah.
But there used to be a difference.
For sure.
It used to be a negative.
Yeah, the nerd was Sheldon or any of the guys from Revenge of the Nerds, how they were super bright, but just, wouldn't be able to talk to another human being on anything other than
Outcast,
their topic
different.
of choice.
Yeah.
Without alcohol.
Right. And and geek was more just Captain Sweatpants.
Yeah, weirdo.
Basement dweller.
Yeah.
had that weird collection of cats and
Hutch living in the carriage house.
Yeah. But I'm glad that we don't seem to segregate the group that way anymore. Like, hey, you're into Game of Thrones, I'm into Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Or, or Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever. I mean, you can always find something in common to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that we used that show sort of as a touchstone.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh, did you watch Big Bang? Oh, yeah, they were talking about blah thing, or, oh, Sheldon was wearing another Flash shirt this week, or this week I didn't recognize that yellow thing with the Green Lantern thing on it.
I quite enjoyed waiting.
Corps.
I really enjoyed watching it specifically for the T-shirts, because it's like, oh, where can I get that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I mean, where people who were into sports or cars could rally around, oh, did you watch the race on the weekend? Oh, did you see the game yesterday?
Yeah, for sure.
We didn't really have something like that to get excited about. Like, hey, finally, somebody who looks like me, sounds like me, likes the same stuff as me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you're into hockey, you play hockey, you watch hockey, you listen to people talk about hockey, you can talk to your friends about hockey.
Right.
But if you're into, comic books, that's a pretty solitary thing to do.
It sure can be, that's for sure.
But when you've got that background of information and all of a sudden you see somebody describing the operation of the universe in terms of, the Flash or whomever, you finally, hey, that makes sense. I get those references, and I think that guy at work who wears the Flash t-shirt, he might watch it too. And we've got that connection. Now we can talk.
I see somebody with a pop culture t-shirt on, and I immediately say to myself, they're safe to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's like they're okay to talk to.
The block parent sign.
Yep.
Safe to go to that place.
Yeah. Well, Dan, Kelly, Kim, I just want to say thank you for wanting to come in here and do this with me. It's always a privilege to be able to sit down and share my nerddom with anybody and everybody who wants to listen. It's been such a rewarding experience for me. And I hope you guys had a good time tonight.
Yes, absolutely, we did.
It was fun.
A lot of fun, yeah.
I hope I can call on you again for future episodes.
We hope so.
Yeah,
so before we kick off, I just want to go around the table and just ask everybody, what's your side project? Where can people find you?
I don't have a side project. I guess Chewy, our dog, is our side project. My side project right
Props
now.
To Chewy.
Keeping him happy and amused and the kids fed. That's my project.
Oh, fantastic.
Nice.
And the man happy here.
All right.
I guess mine is the Kawartha arcade machines. I build video cabinets and arcade machines and video pinball machines just for something to do. And if you want, you can check us out on Facebook at Kawartha Arcade Machines.
Let's not forget that these are for sale. So if you're looking for a full-size or half-size or bar-top machine for your household or office, Dan is definitely a guy you want to talk to. Where can they find you, Dan?
It's facebook.com/Kawartha Arcade Machines.
Awesome. What about you, Kim?
Thank you.
Not too much going on. Working in the salon, hair definitions, and we're doing the toy store. It's a little bit slower with this whole COVID thing.
And you are taking new clientele?
Yeah, I'm taking new clientele. You can find me on Facebook. And then for fun, I'm just writing my book about vampires.
And do you have a ballpark on when we can expect to see that?
I've submitted it to a few publishers. The last one gave me a few critiques. So I'm just kind of going over the editing one last time to kind of clean it up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to try putting it out there. And if by chance a publisher doesn't pick it up, I'm seriously contemplating self-publishing, which so many people are doing now.
Lots of people are doing it.
So that might be an avenue. But the first book is done. I see it as a 3-book series.
Sure.
So
a trilogy.
Yay. No sparkles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
So, yeah.
Is that like
exciting,
Vampire the Masquerade kind of vampires, or Bram Stoker-y type?
It's a dystopian future.
Ooh.
And basically, my vampires are people. They die. Mm-hmm. They just take a long time to do it. And it's basically, they've been hidden for years. There's 2 kind of races. the good, the bad. I don't want to give too many spoilers out, but the bad decide that they're tired of hidden, and these humans have destroyed the world, and kind of they're superior to the humans, and they start this war. And the good vampires are like, you know what? This can't happen. We have to live in harmony for this planet to survive. And so there's this I don't know how to say it, but there's this war that happens, and the world, the humans are almost wiped out. And there's this one girl who kind of is the deciding factor of what side am I going to go on? How is this going to end? Good, bad, indifferent? So yeah, we're working on
You had me at dystopian future.
Okay. I should have stopped then.
You had me at vampires.
Well, as for me, you can catch me here semi-regularly here as your host of Fandom Power, and you can also catch me on my other show with my recording partner, Scott Elder. It's Hanging at the Barbershop, and it's a buddy chat show. We're on all the podcasting apps. And that's it for me. This has been Fandom Power. My name is Wes Arscott. I hope you'll join us on the next episode. Thanks for listening, and have a good day.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.